welcome back to another tying video with Old Florida. My name is Mike. Today we're going to be tying a woolly bugger. First thing we're going to do is take our hook and our bead. We're going to go ahead and put our bead on our hook. The proper way to do this is poking the hook through the regular side being the non-concave side. Once we have that on there, we're going to go ahead and take our hook, secure it in the vise, and we're going to take our thread and start it right behind the bead, working our way back to the barb of the hook. Once we have that to the barb, we can go ahead and trim that tag end off. I'm actually going to take my thread and move it back, forward, right behind the bead. Next step is we're going to take our marabou feather. A lot of the times, or traditionally, people will just take this feather and tie it in just like that. It does make for a decent tail. I like to go the extra step and actually take this feather and strip the individual barbs off each side. It gives it a bunch more movement for free, so to me it's worth it. What I'm going to do is just take these feathers from this side right here. I'm just going to work my way down, stripping them off the stem, and carefully just try to grab all of them in one hand. So now I have that stack in one hand. This just adds a lot more movement and a lot more flowiness. I'm going to set that first stack aside, and I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the other side. I'm going to take those individual barbs. I'm just going to work my way down, peeling them off the stem. It's a little bit tricky at first, but once you get it down, it's pretty simple. I'm going to take that stack. I'm going to match them up with the first stack I did. And as you can see, it's a much nicer, flowier, and plumier tail. After we do that, I'm actually just going to take my scissors and cut those little hard parts or stems that I got in the back for no particular reason beside it's easier to work with a little bit. Once you have that there, I'm going to pinch them nice and tight. I'm going to measure how long I want my tail. There is no solid real measurement on how long a woolly bugger tail should be. If you tie it a little bit too long, it might foul. I like doing about 3/4 of an inch, or maybe half the size, the full size of the shank of the hook. So I'll measure just about a full size, and then I'll measure that down there. I'll take my tie in hand and I'll do one nice tight pinch wrap right on the top of the hook, and then I'll really secure that down. With my pointer and thumb, I'll pinch them tightly and I'll start working my way back, lifting them up off the shank of the hook. This just makes a nice smooth surface. Once I got that, I'm going to stop right at the barb of the hook. I'm going to move forward just a bit. I'm going to move basically a little bit in front of the point of the hook. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to trim these out. I like to trim them out by grabbing them and twisting them nice and tight. Taking my scissors and do an angled back cut. I know it looks a little fluffy right now, but once we move our thread forward, we're going to clean that up really nice. They tuck in behind the cone of the bead. I'm going to take my crystal flash next. Oh, I actually need to take a full piece. I'm going to take my full piece of crystal flash, if I could grab one. Once you got a full piece of crystal flash, I'm going to take that, double it over, go ahead and cut that in half again. So now you have two pieces. I'm going to fold that over so I have a V on my thread. I'm going to move that V to the top of the shank of the hook and separate the V. So now I have two pieces on both sides. And then I'm going to wrap back right to the tail again. Then I'm going to come in here with scissors and just trim them just about the same size, if not a little shorter than the marabou tail. Next up, we have the woolly bugger chenille. I'm going to take the woolly bugger chenille. I'm just going to take my fingers and pull out some of that material, exposing the little thread core, little candlewick core. Take my thread and capture that, making sure the start of the woolly bugger chenille is right at my tail. Once you have that down nice and tight, I'm going to move my thread right in front of the point of the hook. Then I'm going to come in here with my Ewing deceiver hackle, and I'm going to take my fingers and I'm just going to pinch the top. I'm going to run it down the stem of the hook, just like I did with the marabou, basically separating those hackles. At the very tip, I'm going to separate just a little bit of a tie-in point, not too far at the tip, just leaving a nice little point for us to tie in at. I'm going to tie that in right on the top of the shank of the hook and secure that down nice and tight. And then I'm going to move my thread forward, covering the point of that feather with some nice wraps. I'm going to take my time making nice touching wraps for the most part to clean up this body just a little bit. And as I wrap forward, I'm also going to wrap right over. As you can see, I just wrapped over the little plume of marabou that we made. We could go ahead and set the Ewing feather side right now. I'm going to go ahead and invert my hook just because it's a little bit easier. At this point, you can use a bobbin cradle and use the full rotary function to wrap or palmer this piece of chenille around. Honestly, I find it easier just to make some nice wraps just by hand. Personally, I think it's just as fast and it gives you a little bit more control actually. I don't like to palmer these too tight. If you palmer it too tight, I'll show you in the next step why it matters. I like to really pull nice and hard at the end, making sure to capture that material right behind the bead nice and tightly. I did break the core just a little bit. That's okay. I'm just still going to work with it. Still came out perfect. And then you could go ahead and trim that out once you've captured it and you have that nice and secure. So now we have just like a little grub body with our marabou tail, and we have our feathers sticking out. This next step, I'm going to take my hackle and palmer this. If you can, with making those palmering wraps with the chenille, you create a little track that you could kind of see with the woolly bugger chenille. If you can fall in the cracks while palmering this all the way up, it gives you a much more durable fly and a much nicer looking fly as well. When you get to the head, I also like to do 2 full wraps with my feathers or feather. Just adds a nice clean head to it, and then you could go ahead and capture that. Once you get that captured, put another wrap or 2, making sure not to trap any of these hackles. And then once you have that, you can trim out the stem. I like to just be really careful at that point, making sure just to cut the stem and not any of the barbs, because it makes the head look a little strange. And then we could come in here, pull everything back, and add 2 or 3 really nice touching wraps on the bead. And then from here, I like to pull everything back with 3 fingers, sweep everything back, and then add 2 sets of 3 whip finishes right behind that bead. It's okay if you build up just a little bit of a thread head. Honestly, I kind of like the look of the little bit of extra color from your thread that's in there. I think it adds a little bit of something. And then that's going to be the done woolly bugger. This is a staple trout fly. I think everyone would be crazy to go trout fishing and not have this in their box in some different colors and sizes. Personally, this is one of my favorite. I love the tan natural look. I think fish react to it really well. As you can see, the Ewing deceiver, it has the stiffer barbs in the back and it gets a little bit softer up front. So when you strip this fly, you could see how it kind of stands up on its own. It's just an incredible pattern. We actually do sell this kit in 2 different styles. One with the premium. This is the Ewing deceiver premium kit. We have a MFC barred saddle hackle kit. The Ewing deceiver, obviously it's a little bit more expensive, but it has much nicer, more versatile. It's just easier to work with. It's a lot better quality of hackle versus the MFC. Don't get me wrong, the MFC still works great. It just doesn't really compare to the Ewing. As always, we offer free shipping anywhere in the US. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us via live chat or on the phone. We're always here to help, and we hope to see you out on the water.